Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. We are back. I know. I'm trying to get on earlier on the weekend so we can get more done because there's too much true crime to talk about. Hello, welcome, all new viewers, all new subscribers, returning, my friends, my favorites, my beautiful stars. Hi. Hello, Augie. I saw Sain in here. Hello. Good to see you guys. I saw Mallory. I saw Happy Sheep. And thank you, Kelly, for becoming a new member. Kelly says, I got a feeling tonight's going to be a good night. We do. Yes, I'm going crazy today. We have this live, Alexee Trevizo. Not going to be too long. We're just going to watch the hearing that I mentioned yesterday. If you missed part one, please go back and play that. I have now made an Alexee playlist. I still have to make playlists for a bunch of other cases that I've only done like one or two videos on and I need to do an update on. So definitely make sure you guys do that. Check out the playlist. Thank you for being here. Please hype this video up, this live up, hit the like button. Subscribe, turn on your notifications. I will be going live multiple times today. And if you can become a member, that would be great. It really helps support smaller channels that are trying to grow. And I always appreciate it. So like I said, we're covering Alexee Trevizo right now. And then we're going to do Mackenzie Shirla phone calls. I need to get caught up on them. I haven't listened to the last few releases. So I want to go through that. And then I am planning on doing another Mackenzie text reading tonight. It's not going to be as long just because I have to prepare and I have a couple videos pre-recorded dropping as well. So there's a lot happening. Like I said, make sure you turn on your notifications. And we also have a true crime Melly After Dark hangout. So definitely tune in on that if you want to just hang out, chill. We're going to be covering numerous topics. So let's get started. Following yesterday's live on Alexee Trevizo, we watched a bunch of body cam footage from the hospital staff. So we didn't watch two of them, and I want to play them today. They're just 10 minutes long each, and then we'll get into the hearing. And, I think this hearing is really important. They talk about the importance of, how Alexee's defense team feels that the hospital violated her rights and her privileges, and so specific information has been thrown out as inadmissible. And so do I think Alexee Trevizo will possibly walk free? Yes, absolutely. I could see it happening, and I can see her getting a slap on the wrist as well. Maybe like probation, like 180 days probation, aka Jake Haro and Rebecca Haro. But anyways, so I could see some bull like that happening because apparently there was a violation somewhere. So we're going to watch the hearing on that. Get your popcorn. Yes. Didn't Melly gonna go crazy? Yes, I am. And Alsay knows exactly what that's like. I don't know this case. Please definitely make sure you check out the live I did yesterday. You'll get a lot of information. Got my popcorn. Okay. So let's watch this first interview. Is a 10-minute interview, and it's with the triage nurse. This is part of the footage that Law and Crime little segment that we watched yesterday. This is the interview that they have in their segment. So she threw away a whole baby. Yes, she did. Her own baby. She gave birth in the bathroom, standing up. I think standing up. Now I'm like, would she have done it sitting down? Maybe on the ground? I don't know. She yanked it out of herself at some point, or maybe not. Definitely ripped apart the umbilical cord with her mouth or hands. I don't know. Don't come for me. That's just the facts. And it's terrifying that someone could do this, especially being at a hospital where it was a safe haven. So yes, it's intense. Yes, please hit the like button. A baby they had picked out. I know, baby Alex, I believe it was, right? How are people like this allowed on earth? I don't get. That's a whole nother conversation. We can have a spirituality and religion and morals, but not right now. We're going to watch. She was on the toilet. Oh, That's terrible. Okay, so let's watch this. It is terrible, terrible, terrible. Here we go. Triage nurse. Oh, and I do want to say, like, if you guys see me disappear and it's just my picture, don't fret. It's only because I have vegan lasagna in the oven and I have to get it out, baby. I can't let it burn. Who's going to want to eat burned lasagna? I wonder how she wasn't coated in blood like herself if she was chewing on the cord and stuff. This is literally going to be like a scary movie. You know, I think they're going to make a scary movie on this. Yeah, I do. Because imagine, like, that would probably be a really good movie too. I'm trying to envision it on like Netflix, like a documentary. Oh my God, I want to talk about the unknown number later. We're going to be talking about it again. So let's get started. I just remembered this. You must share with us, Melly. Come on over. Come on over for dinner. Happy sheep. I hope you feel better soon. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you for being here. Not the trolls. The trolls are like hot on a Sunday. They don't appreciate because I watched it. The documentary. Been waiting for this. Got my Charlies. You got cake pops. Who's gonna take me to Baskin Robbins after? Okay, let's get started. Oh, did it play? Oh yeah, it's playing. Hold on, let them get in here.
You Chris Sanchez?
Chris Sanchez, yeah.
Let's see. Barnabas and Dallas.
Jim Minter.
I don't know if you've been briefed on anything. You're not in trouble. An incident happened in January of the 27th of this year. Do you remember it at all?
Yeah, I'm assuming the 19-year-old that was pregnant.
Right. Can you tell us what happened, what you did with it, what from the beginning, from like when you first saw her to when you last?
Sure. So I triaged the patient.
Okay.
Brought her to our triage room, asked her some of the intake questions, and then moved her to a treatment room. I probably started an IV, gave some medication. So.
Okay. Anything else?
What was her chief complaint?
Chief complaint, I do remember. I think it was abdominal pain or flank pain, something like one of those two.
Do you remember what treatment?
Remember, you guys, she went in for back pain. Oh, I didn't know I was pregnant. And she was like full-blown 9 months pregnant. But literally gave birth.
You moved her to?
Possibly 2. I think it might have been 2.
Okay. Yeah. Anything helps you remember that?
No, just kind of thinking of the layout of the ER.
Gotcha. So you triaged her from, did you bring her in from the waiting room?
Yeah.
Okay, so you brought her in from the waiting room, took her in the treatment room, and then, you triaged her, you just got her chief complaint, did vitals?
Chief complaint, vitals. I believe the doc came in and kind of did a quick assessment in the triage room before we moved her back to a treatment room. Then from there we gave her some pain medication. She started feeling a little better, and then she said she needed to go have a bowel movement, and that's kind of when.
A bowel movement? She called the baby a bowel movement. Oh my gosh, I can't. I can't. This is crazy. This is just crazy.
The whole thing happened.
So what did you do after that?
And you guys remember, they're having the whole part of the thing is that the defense team is saying that the hospital and the doctors, well, not the doctors, but the hospital in general, unalived the baby, giving her morphine and stuff before she had the baby in the bathroom. It was a small dosage of morphine for the pain. They have proof that the baby was breathing. So crazy.
So when she went to do the bowel movement, where were you at?
Initially, I was at the nurse's station, and then at some point I went and kind of checked on her, knocked on the door, seeing if she needed anything. She denied. She said she didn't need anything.
Did you hear anything
I didn't hear anything.
Flush it, toilet flush?
Yes, after a while I started hearing, so I probably checked on her 2 to 3 times, I'm not exactly sure. And then I just kept hearing paper towel dispenser and flushing and like the water running. And I knocked again, did she need anything? Denied anything. And then eventually it got to a point where I said, you need to come out. And I asked the clerk to get the key to unlock the door, because obviously she locked the door to go to the restroom. And whenever we finally had the key to unlock it, she opened it and just kind of walked out.
Did she say anything at that
She didn't
point?
say anything. She was just looking kind of straight past me and went back to the room.
Did you look into the restroom?
I did.
Yeah. What did you see?
Went into the restroom and I saw a large amount of blood.
Where?
And it was on the floor. It appeared to, like, she had tried to wipe it up in places. It was kind of on the back wall behind the commode, the toilet. And so I said, you okay? What happened? And she said, I'm on my period. What she said. And she walked out. And then I went in.
And there's blood everywhere. She was wiping it down, just smearing it everywhere. Yeah.
Because at this point, we had already received the positive pregnancy lab test.
When was that?
I couldn't tell you the exact time, but I know prior to that, we got a positive pregnancy test on her.
Okay, prior to the bowel movement, did you tell her that y'all got a positive?
No, the doc hadn't been in there to tell her yet.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah, so went in there, and I did look into the trash can at that time to see if there would have been anything tossed, but the liner was fresh and completely empty. I didn't pick up the can, obviously I would have known. I just looked in the can and there was nothing in there. It was a fresh liner.
So there's no trash in the
there was
liner?
nothing in there, yeah.
Do you know if they keep fresh liners? Because I know some places they put
Yeah, there's usually
new
like a
liners
roll.
in the bottom of the trash can, and then they put the liner in and
Exactly.
take the trash out.
Right, that way when they change it, they can just put a fresh one in. So yeah, there's usually a roll or a bunch of extra liners at the bottom of the trash can.
So you said there was blood on the floor, and it looked like some parts of it looked like it had been.
Right, it looked like it had been wiped up.
Well, and you said on the wall. Was there any on the toilet?
I think there might have been some at the bottom of the toilet. I don't remember if there was some like on the actual seat.
Okay.
No,
All right, and then so the doc hadn't told her that she had popped.
not yet.
So like, because speaking with Vasquez, she said that, and don't quote me on this, but like y'all did a urine and then a blood.
But, right, so typically they'll do a urine and that just tells you negative, positive. And then they do the blood, it kind of gives them a range of how far along.
So
I don't really care that the police, whoever violated her rights. I said this yesterday. What about the baby's rights? She literally had a full-term baby in that hospital bathroom. Entrapment is what she was charged, the manner of death. Entrapment. She suffocated the baby. Chews off the umbilical cord. I don't know what she does, to be honest. Chews it off, rips it off. I can't tell you how much elasticity an umbilical cord has here. So, you know what? This is crazy. I cannot believe she is not in prison. I'm shook that there's even a chance she might get off on this easy. I can't even believe it. This is like fake.
The urine come back after as well? Or so did all of it come back after she came back?
It probably all came back before.
Okay.
Before.
But the doctor would be the one to tell her.
Yeah, the doctor would be the one to go into the room and tell her. And after she came out of the restroom, that's when she went in to do a vaginal exam. Obviously, we didn't know what this blood was from. We were a little concerned that maybe she had, known that we were going to figure it out and that she might have harmed herself or something in the restroom. So the doc wanted to go check her, but obviously that wasn't the case.
And how long have you been working here?
Here, about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during your time, if someone were to pull the emergency cord have you been here when somebody's pulled that?
Yeah. For
So
the restroom
somebody-
specifically.
Right. So if somebody pulled that cord, y'all would have known.
Oh yeah, the restrooms typically at every facility will give a different chime within a room, like a room call bell.
Right.
It's it's like more of an urgent chime, I guess I would say. Yeah, just so that way everyone knows it's not just your normal.
Right. And to your knowledge, that alarm never went off.
That alarm never went off.
Okay. So what occurred?
So after that, her and the patient went back to the room. The physician and a female nurse went in to do the vaginal exam just to make sure everything was good there. I believe, I wasn't in the room, but I believe that's when the doctor said, hey, you're testing positive for pregnancy. She adamantly denied it up to that point, even with me the entire time. She said she was a virgin. She's had her period every month consistently. So the doc was doing that.
Then you said that.
The audacity to say you're a virgin. You could have just said, I guess what she said. I didn't know I was pregnant, which I don't believe. This is crazy. Alexee Trevizo is a psychopath, and I hope she watches YouTube and lurks to see who is talking about her.
And she told you that when you were
She told me that in
triaging?
triage,
Okay.
yeah, that she was a virgin and that she had her last pregnancy was just prior on that month and had.
You mean period? Because you said pregnancy.
I'm sorry, yeah. Her period, she had them consistently every month. So then I started doing my charting, and then we called in the housekeeper to clean the restroom. We call it like a terminal clean, just when it needs to be mopped and everything. And then she felt the weight in the wastebasket, and then that's when we found the baby and then moved it into the trauma tube.
Did you find the baby? Did you see the baby?
I saw the baby
in the trash can, or
in the trash can. HT, he was there. He's another nurse, and Leela, she's the housekeeper. They initially found it, and I went over there and saw it.
Oh my God. Did Mellyverse just find the real life Virgin Mary? That's what you guys are saying in the chat. She's Eve straight from the garden. Not her cheering with a big old BB belly. This is crazy.
and what exactly did you see when you looked in the trash?
I think at that point they had already ripped the bag, but it was just laying, at the base of the trash can under the liner that they had pulled up. And there was like some paper towels in that bag with the baby. And then we moved it over and took it out, put it on the bed, on the stretcher.
So HT and Leela found that you were. So what made you go to them? Did they tell you something, or did you just go?
I believe Leela basically called out for HT, I think, and then he went over there, and then I went over there as well.
Okay,
you
went to go see what happened.
Right. To see what, because typically if someone's calling out in the ER, it's not
bad.
Good. Yeah, it's usually not good. So.
Oh, and you said you've been working here 5 years, so.
Yeah, I've been working here about 5 years.
So you're already prepped for something bad?
Well, not necessarily like this. This is definitely unusual for us, but yeah, for bad stuff. If you hear someone kind of calling out, you always go check to see if they need help. Basically.
And could you tell if the baby was alive or
They did not look alive. They did not look alive. But also, I think the time that passed since she left the bathroom and it being in the bag, it was just.
How long do you think that was?
Maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. I just have to guess. I don't know.
And after the doctor went?
Allegedly, she was in the bathroom from like 18 to 20 minutes. So however long it takes to suffocate a baby with a trash bag. I don't know. Never done it. I don't know.
And told her she was pregnant. Did you have any other contact with her after that?
With the patient?
Mm-hmm.
I might have went in to have her sign some paperwork, but that was probably we had to transfer her to get OB care and post.
Did you have any contact with the baby after that?
All we did, we brought the baby up. We called the doctor, obviously, out of the room from her exam, and came in, kind of doc assessed the baby, and basically determined it was not viable to completely work the baby and all that. So that was the extent of it.
Okay. So and then your last contract was doing paperwork to transfer her out?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know of anybody else that would have had contact with her that we should talk to?
Marina Perez, she was the house supervisor. That's probably about it.
What did she do?
She came in and I don't exactly remember. She had a form of paperwork that she was helping fill out with.
Oh, so she's filling out paperwork.
Yeah, with the patient.
Did you see anything in the hallway? Any type of blood droplets or blood from the bathroom to the trauma room? Did you see anything?
I believe there was like maybe from footprints or something. There might have been blood coming from the restroom to the back to her room.
Alexee was like Carrie, the movie Carrie.
All right. Is there anything you think we should know about that we haven't asked?
Not necessarily, not like factual things, just it seemed like we were being just deceived from the beginning, but that's just my take on it. It seemed like she was very manipulative with us. And
what did she appear like when she came in? Could you tell? Because I know most women you can tell, unless they're a large woman.
Right.
She's a petite girl. Could you tell that maybe she was pregnant, or?
I could not. She was very, what would be the word? Not necessarily standoffish, but anytime you asked her to lay down, she would kind of maneuver away from you almost. It seemed like, thinking back, she wouldn't want you to kind of, it was at least what it seemed like to me, she didn't want you to discover, that she was pregnant. And she wore really baggy clothing. And she wouldn't sit still for you. I'm sure she was very uncomfortable too, but yeah, she wouldn't allow you to do it.
All right. Can we
Okay, so that's crazy because remember she's a cheerleader, and I think when you're a cheerleader, you kind of automatically like keep track of that stuff, and you care about what you look like. And is this a new this is a new live? Yeah, Ellie. Hi. I think like how her mom must have at least wondered like, why is she gaining weight or no? Like, you know what I mean? How do you hide a 9-month belly? I've heard of people not knowing they were pregnant for like a few weeks, or even some of you were saying like, oh, I didn't know for like a month or so. And I think that sometimes that's like kind of normal because sometimes women don't know that they're pregnant. But I feel like 9 months, her mom would have questioned it. That crazy mom, Rosa. Oh, don't get me started on Rosa. I don't have the time. Right now, I'm really angry about Rosa. So let's just watch. We just watched the CNA, triage nurse. I'm sorry. And now we're going to watch the registered nurse. We didn't watch this one yesterday either. So let me pull that up. Sorry. I accidentally closed out of it, all of it. Oh, not me having issues. This is one that threw it in the, yes, Allie B. She threw and chewed up, ripped apart like an animal, the umbilical cord. She was taking weight loss. Yeah, I heard she was phentermine. So she really thought phentermine was going to get rid of the baby belly. How sheltered is Alexee Trevizo, right? We've talked about the relationship with her mother and how I think the real monster could possibly be her mother. Allegedly, that is my opinion only. Don't come for me. Happy Sheep says my mom got pregnant. Oh, yeah. Rosa's way too in her business. You know who I get? Rosa kind of gives me exactly with the Kendra from Unknown Number. Make sure you watch that live. Kathy Bates. Is that her name? From the Norman Bates? Is that her name? Norma Bates. I'm sorry, not Kathy Bates. Norma Bates. That's who they give me those vibes. You know what I mean? She's very selfish. That's absolutely ridiculous. I bet everyone knew, and it's not like she wasn't showing. I know. After 6 months, you've got to know something or you're just brain dead. Allie says, but I was asking, oh yeah, these videos are, I don't know exactly. It is a good refresh because she's about to walk, I think, with like 180 days probation, maybe a month or something of house arrest. I know, I thought it was Kathy Bates. Okay, let's get started on this. This one is the registered nurse, and this one is like 9 minutes.
Okay, and are you Elizabeth Crawford?
Yes.
Detective Gonzalez.
Jim Minter, nice to meet you.
All right.
You're not in trouble.
I know.
Okay.
We just want to start that off with all the
Exactly, good point. Stephanie says she was 19. Yeah, but how do you get phentermine prescribed at such a young age? I generally know doctors don't give that to people unless they're obese, and it's not even FDA approved. Is it? Well, yeah. I don't know that it's not FDA approved. I just know that it's not on the market. It's called something else. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Columbus, Georgia. Wait, another one apart from Lakin, because we're going to be talking about Lakin later today.
all the interviews.
So
What's with all this infanticide, all these moms killing their babies and stuff, and parents?
if you could you just tell us everything from your contact on January 27th with either the patient or the child, any contact you had from beginning to end?
I didn't have much contact with her until she exited the restroom. I didn't take care of her before that. But
So the
after
patient.
that, I took care of her. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell us what happened?
So she came out of the restroom.
Mhm.
There was a trail of blood from the bathroom back to her room. We went to her room. I went to get her undressed. The doctor came in, explained to her that she had a miscarriage. Her mom had a back and forth about it.
The doctor said she had a miscarriage?
Yeah.
Okay.
She said it seems essentially like, I'm not sure the exact words. So she said, it seems that you've suffered from a miscarriage, which didn't seem totally abnormal. It seemed awful miscarriages because they're very bloody. And so.
Was she bloody?
Mhm.
Like
And
her
there was,
legs?
yeah, she had blood all down her legs, and then there was like blood in the bathroom everywhere. So.
Okay. And you saw that?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then got her in the bed, got her in a gown, helped her clean up. Doc came in, we did the pelvic, essentially, and then HT had come in and took the doctor away, and then I helped her get back in the bed, get her comfortable. I went to go get her blankets. That's where the baby itself was in that room where the blankets are. So then I went back in there and I just took care of her tried to as a postpartum patient from then on.
Right.
About it. After that, we had ultrasound come in to essentially make sure there's no products of conception left in there. I think we did the mom some up after the pelvic exam was done.
Were you in there when let's go back.
Okay.
You said you saw blood in the bathroom. Where did you see that?
It was just on the floor, with white marks, essentially.
Was it on the toilet? Was it where exactly was the blood and how much?
It was a good amount. It was on the floor, essentially.
Okay.
So I don't remember seeing a lot on the toilet or anything like that.
Okay.
So she flushed the placenta and was bleeding out everywhere in the bathroom. People thought she had a miscarriage, but she actually gave birth.
So when you came into the room, did she say anything? Did you say anything to her?
Once we all figured out what was going on and I went in there, she essentially was scared. She was worried that she was going to get in trouble. She did have the back and forth with her mother that was just about they had said, the mom was upset because she had had sex and hadn't told her. So they were going back and forth on that, and then she was just denying it, which was a little out of it.
There's no way someone can tell me there's no form of abuse, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, verbal, whatever, that she felt the need to give birth in the hospital bathroom with her mom in the room, in the hospital room, and suffocate that baby. Like, there's no, like, you can't tell me that that mother is not guilty of being something. She was so scared to tell her she was pregnant, and she rather would take her baby's life. She didn't have to take the baby. No one here in this chat does, and no one has to be okay with anything. Just don't kill it. Put it in the bathroom trash. Give it away. Safe haven. Adoption. There's so many options. It's just, I don't understand. Why aren't they paying more attention to that? They're worried about HIPAA violations. Like, those get violated all the time. People just don't have the money to fight it. That's truly what it is. I work in the medical field. So it's just like, you know what? I don't want to hear it. But anyways, so I just feel like, why aren't they paying attention to whatever that relationship is? Because that's questionable. They've heard it from every employee there that mom was crazy, pretty much in their words.
Wasn't really deniable at that point in time.
Right.
So the patient was denying having sex at this point to her mom.
Yeah, she was trying to state that she was still a virgin.
After she came in from the bathroom and all the blood and all that.
So did the pelvic, and then I think shortly after that.
I think abortion, I don't know what the laws are in there, but yeah, she could have if she was under a certain amount of time. But I think after your full term, I don't think you can do an abortion. I know it depends. I know some states are like after 20 weeks or whatever, or even after, I don't know. I think it differs per state. They don't allow them. Some states don't even allow them at all. But like, she could have done that, but she also could have just done an adoption. She could have literally gave birth to it right there on the hospital bed, not put it in the bag, not killed it, and just been like, I don't want it. I don't want it.
The mom was in the waiting room after that. And then she was just worried. She was asking like what was going to happen. I told her obviously did not know.
Is this when you found out she was worried about getting in trouble? Did she tell you anything like?
She didn't say anything about what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
She was just essentially worried that she was just going to get in trouble.
So that's what I mean. Were those the questions she was asking?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so
what's going to happen to me? That kind of thing.
Did she ever ask about the baby?
No.
Not once.
And so her folks, her getting in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
and anything other than that she talked to you about?
She did at one point in time when the ultrasound tech was in the room with her, ask.
Oh, Allie, I'm sorry, but thanks for sharing. See, it sucks right there. Allie says, I would take the baby. I can't have one. That's crazy. That's crazy. That like Alexee didn't, her mom had to have known too. And her mom is adult enough to be like, okay, we don't want it, or I don't want her to have it or something. And let's put it up for adoption or something.
If there was anything, she pretty much said, would there be any like bad outcomes if she had stopped taking one medication and stopped taking another? And I said, well, what medications are you talking about? She said, well, what would happen if I stopped taking birth control, started taking weight loss medications? And I was like, I don't know.
It's an odd question.
That's all.
And how long have you been in RN?
9 years.
And you live here in Artesia?
In Prospect.
So you got her the blankets.
Mm-hmm.
After that, what did you do? Did you have any more contact with the patient?
Yeah, I just popped in periodically and like checked the amount of bleeding, make sure she wasn't hemorrhaging.
Okay. And then, so until she left, is that what you did? Did you do anything else other than checking on her, make sure she was okay?
Just that.
Did you participate in the pelvic exam?
Yeah, I was in the room.
Okay. Were you able to see? Did it appear that she gave birth based on the pelvic exam in your experience?
Would you be able to tell
Yeah.
No.
No,
Okay.
You weren't, okay,
So I've never done OB, so
okay.
what a pelvic exam looks like after birth, I have no idea. I could say that there was a lot of blood, more than normal, like in a normal pelvic exam, obviously.
Right.
Like we tried to get the suction working because there was so much blood that it wouldn't work.
Okay. So, after she left, did you do anything else? Have any other contact?
Mm-mm.
And so that was just your side of it? That's everything you did?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything we haven't asked as of yet that you think we should know about?
Nothing like deeper.
Okay.
The only thing was just those medications that she was asking about. That was weird.
Just what happened if you stopped birth control, started weight loss?
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't like expand on that? She didn't tell you why she was thinking that?
No, it seemed obvious in my head though. So,
Could you like tell me why it seemed obvious?
well, it seemed like she'd been trying to hide this pregnancy from her mother for some time.
Oh,
Right, if you know you're pregnant, you're not going to continue taking birth control medicines. But if you're trying to hide it, you might start taking weight loss medications. That's just kind of what it seemed like to me.
Okay. Just want to make sure because it seems like it to me. Just want to make sure.
I agree with this RN completely. That's true. Why would she be? That's crazy. Asking about phentermine and birth control like they're the same thing.
I'm not thinking.
And was the argument between her and her mom pretty heated?
It's not funny, but it's not. I'm just laughing because I'm like, really? But then it's like, okay, wait, that's how sheltered she was. That her mom, she didn't even know. But it's 2023 at the time, so it's not like it's 1812 where there wasn't computers and Google and you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. Just doesn't make sense.
I wouldn't say heated. It was awkward.
Awkward.
Yeah, like they were going back and forth, and her mom was definitely angry.
And patient is 19. Mom is quite a bit older.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And they never once asked about the baby during the
Oh,
entire time
that's
you had
sad.
contact with her once she left the bathroom. Even
That's-
after they found out that the baby was found and all that, they never asked anything about the baby.
I did go. Now that I think about it, I did go check on the mom just to give her an update, and I think she asked about the situation, like asked what was going on. And I told her I couldn't tell her anything, so I just went to go tell her that like she's being transferred to Roswell
Right.
and give her an update on her daughter essentially, and she asked about like what was going on with all of that. She said, "What happened to the bathroom? What happened to the bathroom?" I said, I can't tell you the
But nothing specific saying,
Nothing.
what about the baby?
Right.
Okay.
What did they mean? Oh, sorry, they redacted
Ew.
that.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's better than this. All right. And you're doing okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
With this, we've asked everybody that we've interviewed that's had something to do with this because it's pretty traumatic. Most people don't
deal with
see
this.
that kind of stuff on it. I mean, I know you see death and in your job, but a newborn baby is a little more intense
Yeah.
in my life and my belief. So
All right. Well, try not to keep you.
Okay, so that was the RN. If you guys are interested in the previous body cam, make sure you check out yesterday's live because we covered a ton of it. And now we're going to get started. Yes, Augie's reminding me to get my lasagna, my vegan lasagna. She ripped the umbilical cord off with her teeth and hands. Yo, it is savage. Okay, so now we're going to listen to the oral argument hearing. And that was this most recent week. And it's crazy because they're basically saying, you know, that they violated her rights, et cetera, et cetera. And the judge pretty much favors the defense, sadly. I think this is the second time it works in her favor to some extent. So no bueno. I hope she doesn't walk. I really hope that she doesn't, but Who knows if there will even be a trial. Let me pull this up, and then I'm gonna go get my lasagna out of the fridge, out of the oven, the fridge. Okay, let's see. Ooh. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize it was quiet for quite some time. Oh. I don't know why my internet's being kind of slow. Here we go.
Good morning. You may be seated. Thank you. Good morning. We're on the record of S1 SC 40487 interlocutory appeal, State versus Trevizo. We have on opening 20 minutes. You may enter your appearance. Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Michael Thomas, NMDOJ, Raul Torres, Attorney General for the state.
Morning. You may proceed.
Thank you. May it please the court, counsel, and attendees. This case, still at the pretrial stage, involves two narrow legal issues, specifically whether the district court's decision to suppress evidence was textually supported and legally sound. The district court erroneously concluded that there were violations of Miranda and of the physician-patient privilege. Many of the court's key findings are either not supported by substantial evidence, or even if they are, do not support any assertedly related legal conclusion, revealing that the district court was mistaken about the applicable law. The interaction of the doctor, other medical staff, and defendant, as well as the police, are captured on the lapel video in the record as Defense Exhibit H from the suppression hearing. A careful review of the video is critical to a proper understanding of the issues, as it undercuts a myriad of defense assertions and glaringly fails to support and outright contradicts the district court's findings, as well as various characterizations in the ruling.
Counsel, I'm going to interrupt you in two things. First, you need to slow way down. Second, I'd like you to address pretty much right out of the gate.
So this hearing is about basically how the hospital violated her rights with like HIPAA violation, and how the officers were in the room when she was getting treated, etc.
Ibarra, it seems to be a case that answers this question a little bit.
And I'm not immediately familiar with that case, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do my best to answer your question.
Okay, so I'll try and tee it up a little bit for you, because I don't want to completely catch you off guard. So this is a 1990 Supreme Court case. And in that case, it's discussing the term interrogation for purposes of Miranda, which seems to be an issue here. And it says that under Miranda refers not only to express questioning, but also to any words or actions on the part of the police, other than those normally attendant to arrest and custody, that the police should know are reasonably likely to elicit incriminating response from the suspect. So that's that concept. Does that help?
Yes, and,
okay,
Your Honor, and I do remember Ibarra. Sorry, I didn't understand, but then I recognized it was Ibarra, which is cited in the brief.
Yes. Okay. No, that's okay. So I would like you to address that statement that comes from Rhode Island versus Innis, but was adopted by the New Mexico Supreme Court.
Yes, thank you. And I do recall Ibarra in the briefs. Your Honor is right that interrogation under Innis can be express questioning, or it can be, as Rhode Island Innis talks about, actions or statements by the police that are, as they say, that the police knew were reasonably likely to elicit an incriminating response. The reason why the state believes there's no interrogation here, Your Honor, is when you look at the video, just so we're all starting from a baseline, the police do not ask her any questions at all. The police do at one point ask the mother, does she have a driver's license? They hand that over. Of course, they're going to run everyone for warrants, like showing up at a car accident scene. But as I cited in the briefs, you know, we all are familiar with cases that say they're asking for a driver's license thing, and that's procedural. That doesn't count as interrogation. So then the question would be, did the police say anything that would be, as Ines says, reasonably likely to elicit?
I was not saying it can be actions as well, and that's what I want to focus on is actions, because I get that the police didn't say anything, they didn't ask questions, but here I don't. My concern is that if we only review the video, and that's out of context to what the police have been told prior to going into the room, there's been a report. They've heard from the nurse, probably things maybe the nurse shouldn't have told them, and then they're invited to go in. And so there's action as a result of that that's different than like they just pop their head in, or if the report had just been made without healthcare folks tying the report to this young lady. That might be different if they were just going room to room saying we'd like everybody's name and information.
This is bull. I disagree. If the baby's life was in danger, where are his rights? Why should they be worried about Alexee's rights? The officer going in there, observing her, whatever they were doing in the room. What if the baby's life was in danger? Why wouldn't they be allowed there? I would hope that if I was in the hospital in the ER and someone just endangered a baby or someone else in the hospital, I would hope that there would be police there. I would hope, you know what I mean? At that point, like, why does HIPAA violations oversee the baby's life?
But here they had this body of knowledge before they walk in the room, and that's what troubles me in this case.
Yes, and I'll do my best to answer. And of course, I know we'll get to the agency issue later, that the other side is arguing that the doctor was an agent. But yes, just strictly actions of the police. And I do appreciate the court's questions in focusing this. We know that it's an objective test for custody, but now we're talking about actions that can be arguably that would have caused or been the equivalent of interrogation under Ines. The state doesn't believe the police did anything here. I'm glad that the Justice Bacon brought up the question of, well, that the nurse went up and talked to the doctors. The charge nurse went up and talked to the police when they arrived at the hospital.
So what? So what if the charge nurse told the police, oh my gosh, there was blood everywhere. Yeah, there was a baby in there. Oh, okay. So they're supposed to report it. What's the thing where they say, like, you know, healthcare professionals need to report stuff and CP, you know, school teachers, like, okay, yeah, they were going to report it. What did you want them to do? Like, what did you want them to tell the officer? Like, we think she had a miscarriage, but it wasn't a fetus. It wasn't a stillborn. It was a full-term baby. Like, not that matters either. It's all taking a life, but still, like, this is crazy.
I don't see a problem with that, because I mean, generally when the police arrive at a scene, they're going to want to talk to the reporting party. Now, granted, the doctor, whoever it was that called the police, the reporting party here is a little ambiguous. It's essentially the medical staff of the hospital. It's not like a neighbor calling the police on a loud party next door, but the police naturally are going to want to talk to the doctor, the nurse, get a little bit of information before they barge in there. I think the police acted very reasonably here. They talked to the doctor, they talked to the nurse, and I think the police are smart enough to realize that just because this charge nurse is telling them this, that, and the other, that's just for the police officer's information. The defendant didn't even know what was being told to the police. So, my point being that nothing that was said to the police in the hallway would have even been known to the defendant. So, going back to the
justice, that's always the
right. My concern here is, and I'm curious, why did the police feel like they needed to go in the room with the doctor while she's talked about the defendant's treatment? Because the doctor told the police before she went in the room, I need to go tell her about what her condition is, what we need to do next. And then she says, will you come with me? Which I find a little strange. But Why did they feel like it was appropriate for them to go in the room with the doctor to discuss treatment?
Well, I would say that at that point, they clearly had reasonable suspicion, probably more than that, given that the medical staff was, and I'm doing my best to answer.
This is such shit. I can't even believe it. Like, I can't.
The medical staff clearly knew that the only person that had been in the bathroom during that entire relevant time was the defendant. This was not going to be a whodunit. So you're right. The doctor does say to the police officers, look, I need to tell her what's going on. I got her accepted to Loveless and Roswell. I need to tell her what's going on. She's bleeding. I need to make sure she's stable. The doctor simply says, does one of you want to go in there with me?
No, that's not what he said. She says, I need to make sure the mother is stable. I don't know if she delivered a placenta. She's bleeding a lot. And she immediately asked the officer, quote, if one of them is willing to be part of the conversation, and invited the officers into the hospital room, and they both agreed. So that's, I want to be clear on what the facts are. And she says, I want you to be part of the conversation, and they both agreed. Secondly,
okay, Judge, maybe this nursing staff and the hospital staff knew that Miss Rosa over there, Rosa girl, is a psychopath and that she would lose her damn marbles. Maybe, just maybe, they feared that. Okay, end of story, case closed. Well, this conversation here, not the whole case, but you know what I mean? Like,
and maybe this is another way of asking the question that Justice Vargas asked. Is there any medical reason for the officers being in the room when she's confronted? Is there any medical reason for inviting the officers into the room?
I would say I don't know that there was a medical reason for them to be in the room, but
is there any legal, any police reason? Is she a threat? Is she getting up and running away? Is she doing any of those things? Is there a suspicion she has a weapon? Or is there any police reason for them being in the room?
And to try to answer.
Yes, her hands are weapons. I've heard that that's a thing with fighters, but she's not a fighter, but her hands are the weapons, Sir Judge.
Question, Justice Steele, I appreciate it. I've watched the video about 10 times. My memory of the video is I don't remember the doctor saying you want to be a part of the conversation. I remember her saying something like, does one of you want to go in there with me?
But assume for purposes of this that that's what happened.
The answer to I do believe they had a legal reason to be in there. They were conducting an investigation.
Investigation of her medical condition?
Well, investigation of what led to the baby being put in the trash.
No, she says.
But if they're investigating,
she says.
got Miranda.
Well, Miranda requires custody and interrogation, which I'll get to in a minute. But my point is that there's no legal bar to the police going in the exam room. Now, granted, I admit it. And the doctor said, "Look, I need to talk to her. I don't want you in there yet. Can you hold on while I talk to her?" I think the police, you can tell from the video, they were very deferential to the doctor. One thing I wanted to point out, because I believe now is a really good time to say that, there's a lot in the answer brief that suggests that the police presence there caused a delay or hindered treatment of some kind, or even delayed possibly her being flown to Roswell. I want to be very clear. There is absolutely zero evidence in the record that would support any fact finder in finding that any medical procedure or care was hindered or delayed, or that they even had anything to do with the helicopter ride. And so what I would say is the best answer I have is I don't believe there was a medical reason for the police to be in there, but clearly the doctor did not say, I want to talk to her in private. I don't want you in there yet. I know we called the police, we called you, but please don't go in there yet. I need to talk to her. Do they have a legal reason to be in there? Yes. Now, might it have been
What's the legal reason?
Well, they're investigating this, and they probably want to, at some point.
Watching her get a pelvic exam, is that investigation?
Well, later on in the video when she's...
Okay, chill out, Judge. It's not like she had her legs open getting a pelvic exam and the officer was just right there like, let me observe, everyone. Looks good. Like this, okay, what is wrong with these people on the judge? They're like 700 and 1,000 years old. Perhaps we could speak about this, but like I work in a hospital, there's no HIPAA when a crime happens. Thank you, Kim. Exactly. I said that earlier. There's a huge difference between abortion and murder. Yes, there is. I worked in a hospital. Okay. They were waiting for her to transport. They took away our anatomy. This happens when they want to protect a person. The level of fear Alexee was displaying of her mom should be the concern here. It really should. That just sounds like a PDF. Though I know he does. I know. This is such seriously against the prosecution here. It's insane. I'm so disappointed in these judges at the New Mexico Supreme Court. I'm shook. It's common sense that the officer would look at the situation and be like, there's something wrong here. Where is the damn baby? She just came out of the bathroom with no baby. There's a baby in the trash can, blood everywhere. Mom's going crazy in the room. I think it's valid that he should have been in there. I don't know. You let me know. I know most of you agree.
There's the point in the video when the nurse says, will you two please step out? And the police do. They step out of the hallway because there was probably some, medical...
Was that hindering their investigation, asking them to leave?
No, it wasn't hindering at all. And the police were very polite. They went out in the hallway. Another thing I wanted to mention too, and again, I think some of this is more clear when you sort of watch the video from beginning to end. There's a point in the video, pretty much exactly at 3 o'clock, where you see the police are out in the hallway and they say to the nurse, they say, well, we don't really want to go in there and cause her more stress. She's dealing with a lot. And at that point, at 3 o'clock, you see the sergeant and the other officer go back into the room when they've clearly been out in the hallway. And the sergeant says, look, we're going to continue waiting out in the hallway. We don't want to add to your stress. We know this is stressful. And the sergeant even explains, we can't have your mom in here right now. We're waiting for the detective. You are 19 years old, but we're going to keep waiting in the hallway. We don't want to add to your stress. I know at answer brief, page 9, it certainly seemed to be making the claim that the police were in their room the entire time for that 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and that's just not true. From 3 o'clock until she was taken away by the helicopter at 4:30, pretty much 99% of that time from 3 a.m. to 4:30, they were waiting out in the hallway. And I don't know if I answered your question, but
But that was after the incriminating statements were made that were suppressed.
Well, yes, but the one thing I hadn't gotten a chance to...
What was incriminating? That the nurse went to the cop before the cop investigated and told them, oh, there's blood everywhere. We don't know what's going on. The housekeeping lady found a little infant baby newborn in the trash. We saw her come out of there. Alexee didn't want to come out of the bathroom for 20 minutes, so much that the hotel or hospital staff had to go get security to get a key to try to get into the bathroom because Alexee was in there for so long. They thought she was slitting her wrist or something. Literally, they thought she was in there causing harm to herself. They thought she had a miscarriage and that she was in there committing harm to herself. So they went after 20 minutes and got the key from security. They didn't even enter because Alexee walked out right when that happened. How is that incriminating? Like, how did the police do wrong? Maybe because I'm not a judge and I'm not a police. I don't know. But I'm a human. So I feel like, what the F is wrong with this picture?
Get to yet was that it's 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes into the lapel video that they tell her you're detained. You're not under arrest, but you are being detained. Put aside, of course, the cases that talk about being detained is different than being in custody for Miranda. Even if this court believed that she was in custody at that point, 3 minutes into the lapel video, and everything else was suppressed, she had already made the statements, and that's why I mentioned in the brief in chief that the motion was a little bit broad and not. The other side's motion was a little broad in not limiting the request to exclude statements to at least the point where she was told, you're not under arrest, but you are detained and you're not free to leave. But it was a little bit overbroad. And the case here, I'm trying to find the case really quick. Yes, State v. Philemon v. 2018 NMSC 11 talks about the difference between investigative detention and a custodial one, that the latter, meaning custody, involves coercive conditions as to constitute the functional equivalent of an arrest. The one thing I also wanted to notice, and I know I'm not trying to get away from the interrogation, I'll be glad to answer any other questions on that. But of course, we know that there has to be both interrogation and custody. Putting aside the agency issue, Santiago case, whether the doctor acted as an agent of the police, There's clearly no custody here. And the cases that support that are 3 cases, well, one in New Mexico and 2 others. State v.
The
Locouture.
defense is saying the doctor acted as an agent of the police. How about an agent of the baby's rights, of humans, of citizens, of other people in that hospital in there for some emergency department visit reason? I am outraged. I am outraged. I'm just the poor baby. I know. Yeah, exactly, Beth. You're just ashamed because everyone knows you're sicko, Alexee.
For 2009 NMCA 71, and that's the case that was provided in the Notice of Supplemental Authority back in March. And Locouture, some of the things they say in that case are almost 100% applicable here. What Locouture said was, Locouture, he had been involved in like a DUI or some kind of accident. He was in the hospital for injuries. And what the court said was, the fact that Locouture, this is paragraph 18 of Locouture. The fact that Locouture was restrained by injuries and medical accoutrements warrants little consideration. This is a Judge Kennedy Court of Appeals opinion. Locouture was exposed only to circumstantial restraints, and as stated above, the record indicates no action by Officer Diaz to restrain him. And Locouture, just to be clear, is not an outlier whatsoever. In the reply brief, I cited State v. Garrison, a July 2024 Connecticut Supreme Court case. And
so is it your argument today that the custody was circumstantial custody? Because it's not like, she's just delivered a baby, is bleeding out. It's not as though she's going to flee at that point. So are you asserting that there was no custody at all, or is it circumstantial custody from your perspective?
Well, custody, of course, can be formal arrest or, as the cases talk about, a restraint on liberty that basically, what's this, how they phrase it? Yes, when the person's freedom of movement has been restrained to a degree associated with a formal arrest.
So that was a follow-up question just Bacon I had, which is.
That's bull caca, because remember the officer said you're not under arrest. You may not leave the hospital, but you're not under arrest. I know, Kim. The doctor acted as an agent for the patient. He has a duty of care to all patients, not just little Alexee in there. Perpetrators' rights over victims' rights again. When will this bull end? I know, Augie. This is infuriating. Yes, Mendra.
So is the restraint of movement of the defendant based on the condition or that there were officers in the room? Does it matter?
Yes, I don't believe it does matter because Garrison and there's also this Johnson case that I cited in the Notice of Supplemental Authority 2 weeks will talk about the fact that if you're in a hospital, yes, officers may be present, but if the officers are not doing anything additional to limit your freedom of movement and they're being polite or not being antagonistic, that alone is not enough for custody. And in Garrison, it talks about an example in Garrison at page 289, it's 323 8th 289. The court says, because there is nothing in the record to suggest that any of the officers with whom the defendant interacted were threatening or aggressive, we conclude that the tone and tenor of the questioning weigh against the conclusion that the defendant was restrained. And I can't find it off the top of my head. The court talks in there about the fact that the real key is whether the police did anything to further restrain the movement. And probably the case that really best addresses that is the Johnson v. Commonwealth of Virginia. This is, again, 2 weeks ago, Notice of Supplemental Authority, 916 Southeast 2nd, 910. And what the court says in that case at page 921, so this is 916 Southeast 2nd at 921, the court says, the medical equipment connected to Johnson would have made it difficult for him to get out of bed, but his immobility was not caused by the police. Johnson was receiving essential medical care because he had shot himself in the chest.
I follow all of that, but here the police didn't leave. They stood outside the door. They said, we're standing outside the door. They shut the door. Isn't that some evidence of restraint or custody where they didn't have to, handcuff her because she's medically unstable, But isn't the fact of their presence and standing outside the door to prevent somebody from coming and going, and they're monitoring exactly where she's going, they know she's going to be transported, all of that, isn't that some indicia of further restraint based on the language you just read to me?
I don't believe that would meet the test of state being moved that was cited in the brief, which is the degree associated with a formal arrest. Because again, when you look at Locketeur, Johnson, and Garrison, they really are saying that if, yes, you may have an IV line, maybe you're injured, you may not practically be able to leave the hospital, but the police aren't doing anything to further restrain you. So I don't believe them waiting out in the hallway would be custody, but certainly any such finding would have to be limited at least to the point about 3 minutes into the lapel video when they say you are being detained, you're not under arrest, but you're detained, you're not free to leave. But unfortunately, the trial court's ruling suppressed even the statements she made earlier when the police literally were just standing there not saying a word and the doctor was talking. I know that gets into the agency issue.
Well, it also gets into the privilege issue, and your time is limited. Setting aside Fourth Amendment for purposes of our conversation and the privilege, it appears that the state is taking a position that everything that the victim said is admissible because of the doctor's requirement under statute to report that as a crime. And I'm struggling with that. I can see the doctor, as she did, say we have a deceased individual and I need to report that. But the rest of it seems at that point you're just opening it up that all the privileges are just waived and whatever that defendant talked about is admissible. Can you address the privilege issue?
Yes, I'll do it very quickly and I'll be glad to do it more in rebuttal. Two things, 11504D4 does have the exception, and as I noted in the brief, this court clearly has, as the issuer of that rule, has, and I mentioned this in the brief, has a common law ability to interpret that rule. I would say 11504D4 certainly covers this, but the other big issue is the waiver, the fact that she spoke to the doctor with the police present and her mom present.
Okay, so mom's there to take care of her?
Well, she was 19 years old though.
Okay. And the officers, to Justice Bacon's question, and you can address this, I'll give you some time. They were at least guarding, at least if we're not going into the Fourth Amendment, they were in there. So that's a struggle with that waiver.
And she's on a myriad of drugs.
And I understand. So real quick, the only thing I would say, Your Honor, if you allow me 10 seconds, is that
it's okay. It's okay.
They need to chill out. I'm about to pull out the report. She was on morphine and ketorolac and sodium chloride and a bunch of. She was fine. She was fine.
Imagine if the situation had been the doctor had gone in before the police got there. Let's say the police were on their way and the doctor goes in and says, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but we discovered a dead baby in the bathroom. And then she says, I'm sorry, it came out of me. I didn't know what to do. I think that would not have been privileged. And let's say the police arrived 3 minutes later, because that goes to the heart of the D4, 11504 D4 exception. So I think one way to look at it is, had she made that statement in response to the doctor's statement, we found a dead baby in the bathroom, even had the police not been there, I believe that would have not been privileged under the spirit of State v. Strauss and 11504 D4. And I'll sit down and wait.
No, don't.
Take your time.
Justice Moore has a question. Justice Moore, did you?
I was more clarifying that you talked about the mom being present during the conversation and the statements made by defendant. And yes, the defendant was 19, but I might be remembering wrong. It's entirely possible. I want to see if I am. Wasn't there something she signed authorizing her mom as a caretaker or a party that she wanted? Maybe something where she wanted her to be present during the medical treatment. And does that do anything with the waiver issue? If my question makes sense.
I don't know if I can answer that off the top of my head without going back and looking at the record, but I believe that the general rule is that the presence of a third party not strictly necessary, like a paralegal being there during an attorney-client conversation causes it to be.
She's 18. It's a law that's an adult. I don't know what the hell Rosa was in there not minding her own damn business, trying to control her daughter's life like she has been for the last 19 years. I don't know, Rosa. Maybe stop being a psychopath mom. and don't be in the room. Okay, I pulled up the hospital report. She had Flexeril, which is a muscle spasm medication. She had acetaminophen, which is like Tylenol. She had sodium chloride, which is nothing. Ketorolac, which is kind of for pain. Ondansetron, which is Zofran, which is for vomiting and nausea, and morphine. She had 4 milligrams one time IV push. That's it. Chill out, Judge. Chill out. Definitely know you didn't go to school for medical stuff.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Mr. 30 minutes for appellee. May enter your parents and proceed.
Thank you, Chief Justice. My name is Amber Feyerberg on behalf of the defendant, Alexee. Good morning, Chief Justice, justices of the court, counsel. As I said, my name is Amber Feyerberg. I represent Alexee Trevizo, the defendant appellee. The legal issues here, although that conversation got somewhat convoluted, are actually relatively straightforward. It's the ramifications of this case that are extraordinary for Ms. Trevizo and for every vulnerable patient in New Mexico, and for the state's commitment to safe, confidential reproductive health care.
Safe reproductive health care means don't hide your pregnancy, the lack of prenatal care, which endangers another life, and then she kills a baby in the bathroom. I know this is her team, their defense team. I'm annoyed.
And even more importantly, to maintaining the line that separates medical care from police investigations. Physicians and medical personnel take on the role of caregiver. Police take on the role of investigator. If we accept the state's position in this case, that line completely disappears. And it's to the detriment of New Mexico patients at their most vulnerable moment. Police are in the emergency department every single day. This is something real live doctors have to navigate every single day. And the people who are there are inherently at their most vulnerable moment. There are guidelines here. The state's position is essentially there is no limit. If there is a reason to report, and I want to get into later which reporting statute is actually applicable here. I would argue it's a suspicious death and not child abuse. Those are two separate reporting statutes. But the state is arguing if there's a duty to report, there is no privilege.
A suspicious death? Okay. Let me go give birth in the bathroom. Blood everywhere. Umbilical cord findings. Like, suspicious death? It was suspicious to the cops. Like, Alexee knew what was going on, is what I mean by that. Like, what? This is insane. This is just terrible. Yes, I agree with you guys.
There is no Miranda rights. There are no more rights. We just go on in this joint investigation.
I'm not sure that I agree that that's where the state's gone. You're blending the two. I think Miranda, the argument as I understand it from the state, isn't related to the duty to report. I think the duty to report becomes important in the privilege conversation that I really do want to explore with you today. But Miranda just seems to be, they were invited into the room and they didn't do anything. They were polite, they were nice. I heard that a lot. And therefore, there was no detention, no interrogation.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Justice Bacon. And you're right. You're absolutely right. There is the mandatory reporting falls under the privilege issue, where I think the state is largely mistaken. But let's talk about Miranda for a minute. Let's talk about that custody, because all of the cases that we just heard counsel cite are completely distinguishable here.
So when the state agrees that there was no medical reason for having the police officers in the room, does that bear on Miranda?
Absolutely.
Tell me how.
Absolutely. Well, to answer your question, Justice V. Hill, there are basically two universes we can be in. We can be in an investigatory universe where Miranda applies, or we can be in, we're here to support the doctor, and we're in the medical universe and privilege applies. The state can't thread the needle through those two. By admitting that there is no medical purpose for the police to be in the room, that's effectively an admission that they're there to investigate a potential crime.
But is investigation the same as interrogation and detention?
That question doesn't go to custody. I am interested in that. I mean, does the answer to Senior Justice's question mean they're in custody? Because then you get to interrogation.
Well, I want to make sure I understand your questions. So I want to make sure I understand your questions appropriately before I answer. There is a difference between investigation and custody, but in this case, there wasn't. In this case, there wasn't, and the reason is because of that pre-confrontation conversation that occurred in the hallway that the justices were discussing earlier. And that's that conversation where police are told by the charge nurse that she entered the bathroom to, and again, the charge nurse never treated Alexee.
That really seems related to interrogation. We're talking about custody. The question is, was she restrained? Was she free to leave? Those are the kinds of things we're looking at when we're deciding whether she's in custody. And what I'd really like to hear your take on the two cases where custody is an issue in New Mexico, and we're dealing with medical care emergency rooms, and that's Ibarra and La Couture. Ibarra, we have a defendant who is clearly in custody. He's been arrested already, and he's taken for medical treatment in the emergency room. And then we have La Couture, where they're not in custody yet. Tell me how those cases bear on this situation.
Absolutely. Ibarra says, and I don't have the pin site on me, but Ibarra says, Ibarra uses the term an inherently coercive environment to describe the emergency department. And that's directly contrary to what the Court of Appeals said in La Couture, which effectively said this is just a normal situation, but that was factually distinguishable.
But Ibarra was already in custody. There was no question about custody in Ibarra.
Correct. Your Honor is absolutely right. The reason it matters, though, is because that inherent coercion also goes to custody under Munoz. Munoz gives us...
She definitely wasn't in custody, and she definitely wasn't interrogated, in my opinion. They were concerned. They asked questions. They said, you're detained, not free to leave. But she wasn't arrested. At no point did I hear dumbass Rosa say anything like, where's my lawyer? Please don't talk to my daughter. Please exit the room. I don't want them in here. Maybe from Alexee. Nowhere do you hear anything. You just hear her say, I didn't know what it was. A whole ass baby that came out of her.
The conversation earlier with counsel got really focused on custody only being a restriction of freedom to the degree normally associated with formal arrests. But in New Mexico, it's disjunctive. We have two ways that somebody can be in custody. There's that way, which normally comes with handcuffs and everything else. And then there's the second, which is that a reasonable person in the same situation, and in this moment, let's put ourselves in the mind of a reasonable 19-year-old high schooler, would not feel free to leave. And that's where Ibarra, I think, is so important, Your Honor, because it talks about the inherently...
A 19-year-old high schooler who knows what schmeck is and was doing it without protection with her boyfriend, ma'am, sir, judge, justice, sir.
Coercive environment of the emergency department, and cautioned police against exploiting it.
I ask you just in answering that, can you, because the state did, can you, in discussing custody, talk about the 3 minutes prior to the officer telling her that she was detained versus what happened after? Because the state seems to be breaking it up like that. And you might not agree. I'm just wondering if you can address that. Because in my mind, that could possibly be an issue. 3 minutes prior to them telling her she was detained.
Correct. Yeah. So the questioning started 3 minutes prior to them confirming that she was detained. To my mind, Your Honor, the reason that doesn't bear on this case in the way that the state wants it to is because that was a confirmation sheet. And he said earlier, we heard counsel say, this isn't a whodunit. This isn't who had the baby in the bathroom. So there's nothing that was stated there that would have taken police from a place. And that's where that pre-confrontation comes in with the nurse, where he says, she went in there to harm her pregnancy. She's lied the whole time she's here. She's gonna lie to you, and she killed the kid. So they're operating under, we're in a homicide investigation now. She's our only suspect.
And I think the through line of what you're saying is Miranda.
Yes, the surveillance video shows she was the only one in the hallway other than hospital staff at that time. This is bonkers.
Doesn't require confirmation by the police that you're being detained. I mean, our case law all over the place handles cases where there is no confirmation.
Absolutely. And the one thing that we haven't yet addressed, Justice Bacon, is the main difference between those cases on which the state relies and this one is the placement of police, where they're either just in the emergency department, they happen to overhear, or they're standing back, and there's this independent conversation. What we have not seen in any of those cases that makes this one markedly different is that these officers were physically blocking the door. We heard counsel talk a lot about that video. In that video, we see Alexee Trevizo on the bed, hemorrhaging in a hospital gown. Those are the circumstantial ideas, right, that we talked about earlier, that your honors talked about earlier in terms of circumstantial custody, that she's not free to leave. But that's not what puts her in custody for Miranda purposes. I mean, that's part of the coercive environment that they're exploiting, that they're taking advantage of here. But the reason she's in custody is because she has 4 authority figures acting in concert, only one of whom she's ever seen before. That's the doctor, the charge nurse. And as if you've all seen the video, he's a large man who aligned himself very strongly with police. These 3 men walk into the room and they're physically blocking the door. The operative question for the court is, would a reasonable 19-year-old high school girl in that situation feel free to leave? And the answer is no.
Yes.
Even if she wasn't hemorrhaging, even if she wasn't hooked up to an IV, even if she hadn't just experienced the first vaginal.
I'm effing pissed. She could have, like I just said, her mom who was in there, who didn't need to have to legally be in there, they could have said, I don't want to talk to you. Where's my lawyer? Why are you here? We never heard that. And the cop the body cam did not catch her vaginal pelvic exam or whatever. The cop pretty much turned around and exited the room at that point. He slightly exited the room. I'm totally with the hospital staff and the state here. 1,000,000,000%.
Exam of her entire life and the precipitous labor and delivery of what the defense posits was a stillborn in the bathroom. Those all contextualize it. Yes, Your Honor.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I really do want to talk about the privilege. We have not had an opportunity with the state to really talk about the privilege either, but I need you to identify something pretty specific to me because I don't know the answer to the question.
Absolutely.
What, to your client's mind, did the doctor say? What's the actual violation of the privilege? What are the words spoken by the doctor that you assert are a violation of the privilege?
I'm not sure that that's the way, Your Honor, that I conceptualize the privilege. The privilege is a rule created by this court as a rule of evidence. So the question is, so the doctor can invoke Alexee's privilege for her and should have, but did not. And should have a pursuant to medical ethics and her professional guidelines and did not. But in terms of waiving the privilege, only Alexee can do that. And so this is a
Before we waive, get to it's a privilege.
Yeah, I mean, why is this? What is
Yeah.
the privilege being asserted here? I mean, I know that it's a physician-patient, but what is happening? What have you identified as triggering the violation of the privilege?
well, the violation. There's actually 2 different
Okay,
violations.
and that's what I want to try and
Yeah,
understand.
there's, and you can see this from the court order because we've got the district court made an order, one on the statements made directly responsive to the collective confrontation in the room, and also.
But that's what I want to try and get to, because if the privilege you're asserting that's been broken is the statement of we found a baby in trash, that's not a privileged statement because it's not about Ms. Trevizo's healthcare. It's just a statement.
I'm not sure I would agree with your honor.
Well, let me
Okay.
finish. So to me, that is not a violation of privilege. The remainder, we need to transport, bleeding out all of that information. I might agree with you as a violation of the privilege, but in this context, given the suppression here, I don't think anybody cares, because that comes after the inculpatory statements by Ms. Trevizo. And so if that's a violation of the privilege, sure, but it's not what is really at issue here.
What's really at issue here, Your Honor, are Alexee Trevizo's statements. It's not the doctor making a statement. The doctor and the nurse both did violate their duty of confidentiality several times by telling officers, I think you said earlier, Justice Bacon, I'm not sure they should have, but to get to the actual statement that is, there's two realms, but the one that is responsive is Alexee's statement.
Okay, if they maybe hadn't found the baby, if maybe there was just blood in the bathroom and all over the walls, you guys, because remember, she was smearing it everywhere. Like it was like finger paint, a child playing with finger paint. And because she was trying to clean it up and she chewed up the umbilical cord, right? And so it's gushing everywhere. But anyways, like if there was no baby, then I would be like, okay, yeah, they might have incriminated her without having more information, thus whatever violation of whatever the hell. But there was a baby. There was a body. I think the cops did the right thing. I think I think it was Kim said earlier, she's endangering the people in the hospital who again they're vulnerable. They're sick. They're not well. It's an emergency department, right? I just
Alexee's statement, which was made for the purposes of treatment and diagnosis.
Oh, sorry. It's my internet.
That's the standard under Rule 504. And the reason here that it is, the doctor comes in and says, I'm sorry, there's police here. We found a dead baby in the bathroom. So this is the first time the doctor has spoken to Alexee, and she made it clear later in an interview, and her actions made it clear at the time, and this is the substantial evidence that the district court relied on, that she wasn't going to get treatment without police present. So this information, the doctor didn't know where the placenta was. Indeed, the placenta was never found. The doctor didn't know anything about the circumstances of the birth. So Alexee's statement confirming that birth is absolutely necessary for her ongoing diagnosis and treatment. The problem here is not, I think where we're a little bit stuck is we're imagining that the police could have come in and maybe the doctor could have said something different that wouldn't have triggered the physician-patient privilege. And I would say, no, the police should absolutely not have been in the patient care room, nor should Dr. Vasquez have instructed her entire ED staff not to interact with Ms. Trevizo except for in the presence of law enforcement. She effectively conditioned her ongoing treatment on their presence.
So why talk to me then about waiver?
Okay, let's talk about waiver. Yeah. So here the state is effectively saying, and this is how I understand it, that Alexee has waived her privilege by the presence of third parties. Well, all we need to do is look at the text of the rule. The rule, and instead of me paraphrasing it, I'll just read it because I think that would be probably better. The rule defines confidential communications, and then we can get to the exception, which is the mandatory reporting exception. But the rule defines confidential communication as a communication made privately, not intended for further disclosure, and then this is the operative language, except to other persons in furtherance of the purpose of the communication. Now that has a little bit of a loop-de-loop feel, because what does it mean in furtherance of the purpose of the communication? We know that from the first part of the rule, which says that the communications that are privileged are those in furtherance of diagnosis and treatment. We also have direct case law on point that says, we look at State versus Roper, and granted, Roper was construing an earlier version of this rule that specifically said family members were exempted from the privilege, from waiver. But the current version of the rule actually broadens it. And it broadens it so that it reflects the reality of New Mexico, which is that no person is going to the emergency department by themselves. Every person has a support person, whether it's extended family, whether it's their mother. I mean, and this idea that she's 19 and therefore it doesn't matter, that's not reflected in the law. The law says that any person, it's not someone who's absolutely necessary for care. It's someone who's there in furtherance of that care.
But so the officers are in the room and
Officers
they
are-
are not in furtherance of her care.
I would argue, Your Honor.
Would that be a waiver? I mean, I think the state asserts that that's a waiver, like that she's cognizant of what's happening and makes a knowing decision. I don't care that they're here. I'm going to answer this question. It's not a question, this statement for purposes of furtherance of my care.
I think in that idea, it kind of loops back on there's two things here. One, it loops back on the idea of Miranda, that a statement, any waiver needs to be voluntary. And so for the same reasons, we would argue she didn't voluntarily waive any rights under Miranda. She didn't voluntarily waive any rights.
So, Ms. Tabor, assuming for purposes of discussion, assuming that the statement by the doctor, we found a dead baby in the bathroom, was a violation of the physician-patient privilege in the context of everything that's going on, she never had a chance to waive.
Correct.
There's no waiver.
Right. You can't waive a right that you've not been informed.
And she had no, and by the way, a fact I think that you left out, and I don't think you meant to, because of custody, is that the officers were armed.
Absolutely.
Visibly armed.
Absolutely, visibly armed. And if I could just add one more thing to speak to that, Justice Vigil, and also finish answering your question, Justice Bacon, they also fit into other persons.
Wow, they seem like they're definitely on the side of the defense.
Because the reason is because of what the doctor said. That and the charge nurse verified it and said the exact same thing. No one's talking to Alexee, aka no one's treating her except in the presence of police. So in that situation, they're absolutely in furtherance of care because she's not.
But how was the mom in furtherance of the care? She's actually she was questioning her daughter more than the police were. And it wasn't about her treatment. It was about, you did this and you're going to be in trouble and all of those comments. And in fact, if I remember correctly, I think the police even at one point said, please stop. So how was the mom there in furtherance of her care?
I think we have to step back and look at the totality of the circumstances for that. The statements that you're pointing to, Justice Zamora, or from mom are her own reactive statements to what she's just learned. But in the course of Alexee's care, she brought her there as her emergency contact. She was asked by medical professionals at one point to help her get into her gown. She's been going back and forth to the bathroom to knock and see if she's okay. She's sitting by her daughter's side. She's advocating her. That's absolutely in furtherance of care. Just because we now in retrospect think, oh, some of her statements might have been against Alexee's interests, that does not mean that in the moment she was not there in furtherance of care and that the physician-patient privilege does not attach.
So we have exceptions to that.
Correct.
Let's talk about those.
Let's talk about D4.
Let's talk about a statute that also exempts it, a statute by the legislature. We have, interestingly enough, this privilege exists in statute, seems a fair rule, was generated out of common law, 32A45. And let's talk about those two things because it seems to be a high burden on this doctor who has an obligation to report a crime. I think perhaps lawyers have that obligation. Take a separate factual scenario in which they ask a 25-year-old, stabbed in the leg, I killed somebody. They having that conversation as a doctor and a patient, I'm not sure it means the exception doesn't apply. Why doesn't the exception apply?
So you're saying why doesn't the mandatory reporting exception apply to the statements that are happening after the collective enters the room?
Or under the statute shall not be excluded on the grounds that the matters be subject of a physician-patient privilege or of their similar privilege under 32A45.
Right. So I think there's a couple of things here. And one of them is that the report was already made to the extent that it was applicable. And I just want to step back for a moment because we've got two operating statutes. The state has focused exclusively on 32A43, but But there is also, for your honors, 24-11-5. And that's reporting a suspicious death. 32A43, excuse me, is part of the Children's Code. And we know from Strouch and its legislative history that the purpose of that statute is to intervene and protect a child from ongoing abuse. And so hence the mandatory reporters that are reporting abuse. And that statute uses the language that a mandatory reporter, and obviously the doctor is one, if they have reasonable suspicion that a child is an abused or neglected child. And then it goes on to a whole slew of legislative rules that have to happen, including you have to report it either to police or to CYFD. If it goes to police, police need to report it to CYFD. CYFD then gets involved. That's not what's happening here. There's nothing in discovery. There's nothing in the record that police ever got CYFD.
It's not even a child. That little newborn didn't even get a name. How are they like? I'm so sad for that baby. I know you guys are saying that baby wasn't given a choice. Carrie says, why are they treating her with kid gloves? She behaved like an animal. Why is nobody talking about that? I agree. Should not be the doctor opinion at all. Mm-hmm. Well, what happened to the right to life? Exactly.
Involved because this isn't the operable statute. The operable statute is instead 24-11-5, which is reporting a suspicious death. There is no dispute here that doctors did not try to resuscitate this neonate, that they found the neonate cold, blue, very clearly deceased.
I don't disagree with that recitation, but there also is an OMI report, at least according to the briefing. Is this a question of fact?
I think that part probably is a question of fact, but what's not a question of fact, yes, the stillbirth.
Yeah, I know she named the baby Alex, but that was after. I mean, he didn't actually get like a birth certificate there. He got a death certificate at the time of birth. And then she named the baby after killing him, and that's demonic, in my opinion.
Versus live birth is absolutely a question of fact. But the issue of what people knew at the time, as far as a report, there was no OMI report at that time.
It does triggering the suspicious death statute.
Correct. All they saw was a suspicious death. And so that requires one of two things, either a report to local law enforcement or OMI. And then it's up to those people to take on the investigation. But even if we are operating in the realm of 32, of the Children's Code 32A43 and 32A45, I would still argue, Your Honor, that any reporting is not prospective reporting. It's not an ongoing duty of some sort of ongoing duty of disclosure. That would de facto turn a doctor and any other mandatory reporter into an investigator by police.
The only thing the doctor was required to report was we found a dead baby.
I would say that the doctor was required to report the basis of her reasonable suspicion for child abuse. So we found, that's what the statute says. And that's what happened. We don't know that the doctor did it. We think it was and obviously the nurse was the first one to have a conversation with the police.
I don't get it. How was that child abuse, you guys? That's literally schmurder. Hello? I'm confused now.
Report was made. Now it's up to them to take on their investigatory tools. It doesn't mean they have an ongoing open entry into her medical records. The other thing that I would point out for Your Honor, especially Chief Justice, I want to make sure I'm answering your question, is that the records referred to in the Children's Code, I would argue generally referring to the records of the abused child. It doesn't mean, well, now let's look at the suspect and prospectively and in an ongoing manner have access to their records. That's why we have other investigative tools. They could have gotten a search warrant for her DNA.
Oh, brother.
They could have gotten they could have taken her clothes and conducted communications on those. They could have gotten other warrants for medical records. They could have subpoenaed things. They didn't do any of that. Instead, that very night between them and the hospital.
Some of it is based, some of the duty to report child abuse is based on the mother's records, because the pregnant woman who her toxicology screen might report a basis for child abuse, her self-report or clinical observation. When it's a drug exposed baby. So there's some basis in the statute. We're not just looking at the child.
correct, Justice Zamora. But what that portion of the statute also shows us is New Mexico's commitment to reproductive health care. And that what that section says is that mom's status as having used drugs is not an automatic showing of child abuse. So I think here, if we're reading it in total, but I still would urge your honors, I think that the morass of 32A43 is avoided entirely by realizing what doctors saw, what they perceived, what mandatory reporter perceived was a suspicious death. We're not in the realm of CYFD. That's just not where we are here.
We're in the realm of doctor-patient privilege.
Correct.
Oh, brother.
If the defendant would have said instead, same scene, and the defendant would have said, the doctor says we found a deceased individual in the trash can. And the defendant said, I killed that individual. Would that have been privileged?
Well, Your Honor, I would say under that hypothetical, no, the
Okay.
reason being that that statement would not be for the purposes of diagnosis and treatment.
Okay,
That's, yeah.
it's fair enough. So let's get to the statements that are suppressed and tell us how that falls. Basically, in essence, the defendant said, baby fell out of me. That, your views, tied to direct medical treatment because of the hemorrhaging. Understand that?
Not only the hemorrhaging, but what she's describing, what Alexee is describing, what we hear from hospital personnel and what we hear from the state is that from the moment Ms. Trevizo got to the hospital, that she was lying. Well, what do they base that on? That she said that she was bleeding, that she was in 10 out of 10 pain and she wasn't pregnant. It is surprisingly common how many people don't know they're pregnant until well into that case. So that's what they're basing her lying.
I don't know that it's that common at 9 months, and I don't know that. I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm definitely going to look them up. Kim, I agree with your comment. Kim says this attorney is a doctor. She has no right to speak for the protocol of the physicians and the medical personnel. Absolutely. This is why we need a trial. We need medical personnel to go up there and speak, and the hospital staff who was there present.
But what it really shows, and
But they delivered intent.
Not only that, Justice, but also it shows an obstetric emergency. She was probably having a placental abruption. And so what her describing to the doctor what happened in the bathroom would have been extraordinarily important. It is extremely unusual for a woman to be able to go into a space and within an 18-minute period deliver a baby, deliver a placenta, and then walk unassisted back to her room. That demonstrates the amount of morphine that she probably had in her system at that point, because I think, just as a matter of common.
It's 4 milligrams. Chill out. No one's getting high off of the 4 milligrams of morphine unless you're doing who knows? When I had it and I was in the hospital, I definitely was like, I think I need more because of the pain that I was in. But also, she decided to go into the bathroom herself and do that. The hemorrhaging is caused by Alexee's actions. She got up and walked to the bathroom. She cleaned up that and smeared that blood. She did something to the umbilical cord. Like, I don't understand what you mean. I don't understand what this defense.
That's not something you should really be able to do. She would have been. So the idea here is she was in the midst and continued because of the hemorrhaging in the midst of a placental abruption. The doctor did not know where the placenta was. Had any of that been retained in her uterus, she would have bled out and died. So the idea here that her job, she had nothing.
That's Alexee's freaking problem. She's in a hospital and chose to do that in the bathroom. She isn't a 5-year-old. She's a 19-year-old female having sex with her boyfriend. Like, she chose to cause that to herself.
Medical purposes to say to the doctor is simply not the medical reality. They needed to have an open conversation to make sure she got the care that she needed.
Can I ask a really different question that's just been weighing on me? So assume the court agrees with you on either Miranda or privilege. Case goes to trial. You've indicated today that the basis of the defense will be stillbirth. Aren't her
Stillbirth, when the medical professionals said in the examination, the autopsy, basically, medical examiner said there was air in the baby's lungs.
statements supportive of her own defense that you're working so hard to exclude here? And so I see, like, you all will be gone. There will be a new attorney involved, probably a public defender, and we will have excluded statements that are consistent with what her defense is. And that just troubles me in a weird way. That's why I said it's just a related but far field question.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate the question, Your Honor, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll be there for trial, to the extent it happens. But that's just not the operative question for the court to think about trial strategy and so on. I would point the court to State versus Gutierrez, in which this court has decided that they take a different approach than the feds do, for example, on constitutional rights.
Most things.
On most things. And that approach is, we vindicate her rights because they need to be vindicated. Not for deterrence, not for anything else. Her rights were violated. What we need to do here today is try to right that wrong. And then when we get to trial,
she decides to voluntarily use the information.
Correct.
No harm, no foul.
Correct. Okay. Exactly, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I realize that I am running with only 38 seconds left to go. And so I just want to highlight for the court, and I want to make sure I answer all of your questions, but I want to highlight for the court the policy impact for New Mexico of this decision, that it really matters. The stakes here just reach far beyond Alexee. If the state's position is adopted, the message is clear. And that's, in moments of crisis, patients can't trust what they say to medical staff will remain confidential. And that's going to chill patients, especially adolescents, especially our rural patients, especially our vulnerable patients. It will also destabilize the physician-patient relationship that forms the bedrock of our healthcare system. And the district court drew that line correctly. Miranda and Rule 504, the relevant medical ethics, mandatory reporting statutes being narrow, that's where the line lies. In this case, it was completely obliterated. So to erase those safeguards would not only reweigh the facts, we haven't talked about standard of review here, but would not only reweigh the facts, which is what the state's in court in encouraging this court to do, but it would also reshape emergency care so that vulnerable patients would be at risk. And I just want to end on one thought, Your Honors, and that's that this case isn't about whether hospitals can notify police of a suspected crime. They can. And in most cases, they must. It's about what happens after. It's about what happens after that notification. Doctors are caregivers. Police are the investigators. Our law.
Caregivers to newborn babies, yes, ma'am, and you're way over 38 seconds.
Keeps those roles distinct. And it's essential for New Mexico that we continue to keep those roles distinct. And I just want to thank Your Honors for your questions and also ask that you please affirm the district court's order on both grounds, privilege and Miranda. Thank you.
Okay, one moment. Let's see if we have any other questions. Senior Jeff. Okay, thank you, counsel.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
10 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to start off, Your Honor. I will try to talk slower.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I think as you have this conversation, if you can help us separate the Fourth Amendment part and the privilege, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I did make some notes, and please jump in with questions, but I did make some notes about just a few things I wanted to really hit quick. One is that I don't think there's any issue here about whether the doctor had a duty to report, because whether you call it under 32A43, and I did realize that 32A43 talks about a neglected or abused child, but as I pointed in the brief, just from this court's common law interpretation, and it would be odd to say, well, you have a duty to report an abused or neglected child, but not a dead baby. And I'm not going to read much. I don't want to get into the details much, but the defense's own Exhibit D, at the suppression hearing, the defense's own Exhibit D, as in Delta, talks about how the Leela, the custodian lady, what caused them to call the police was that she had found a baby wrapped in a trash bag under another trash bag. Now, as sad as that is, clearly that's a suspicious death. No different than if a 30-year-old had been found in the cleaning supply room with gunshots to the head. And so I wanted to make a few other quick points. So in custody, I know there was a lot of talk about what the charge nurse said, and I maybe didn't articulate this really well earlier, but my point was that whatever was told by the charge nurse to the police would not have affected the defendant's objective, reasonable view. It's an objective view of what a reasonable person in that situation find themselves to be in custody. And none of what was said to the police in the hallway would have been known to her. It's worth just a few.
But it's not about what was known to her. It's about what was known to the police when they said, yes, sure, we will go into the room and have the conversation with you, because that's their yes to the statement. So it's not about what she knows. It's about what the police know and what their motivation was to go in the room and have a conversation with Ms. Trevizo.
And I understand that, but and certainly if the police had gone there, gone home with their guns drawn or something, saying you're not going anywhere, and immediately have made it clear you're in custody.
But they don't have to say any of those things for it to be custody.
And I understand that, but certainly what the defendant is perceiving or hearing is what is the defendant perceiving and reasonably hearing and seeing. The one thing I wanted to point out is this reference to the police being armed. I mean, it's common knowledge that anybody, the police are armed. They could be safe 1 minute and 10 minutes later be dealing with a very dangerous situation. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form the defendant was.
But what about where they were standing in the room? Opposing counsel talked about their location in the room, which was in front of the door. That doesn't seem to support the position that it was not in custody.
Although I would argue that the fact that for nearly about 2.5 minutes, they said absolutely nothing. They just stood there and observed certainly bears on the defendant's perception. Just a quick one or two quotes from Garrison, because Garrison really, the Connecticut case gets to the heart of this. Garrison talks about not all restrictions on a suspect's freedom of action rise to the level of custody. And then they go on to talk about whether a reasonable person would believe that there was a restraint associated with a formal arrest. But another thing that Garrison mentions, I guess this is the part I looked for earlier and I couldn't quite find earlier. Garrison says there's nothing in the record to suggest that a reasonable person in the defendant's situation would have perceived the police officers to be exercising any control or authority over the medical staff. Indeed, the record demonstrates that the officers did not assert control over the medical staff and that the questioning did not delay, interrupt, or restrict the defendant's medical care. I don't want to belabor the point, but if you do get a chance to see in Johnson, the Virginia case from the notice 2 weeks ago, Johnson gives a list of the kind of factors that might be relevant in a hospital, and one of them is whether the police maintained a constant presence in the patient's hospital room. As I noted, from about 3 a.m. to when she leaves in the helicopter at 4:30, you can tell from their camera they're out in the hallway. Mm-hmm. But one other thing I wanted to
mention. But they told her.
And I understand. But she already made the statements.
Which is equivalent to being in the room to be like, we're standing out right outside the door.
Yes, but again, at the point of the 3 minutes into the lapel video, when they tell her you are detained, you're not free to leave, you're not under arrest.
You're the one who raised they were outside the room. You want to focus on the 3 minutes, but you also want to focus on, they were good guys. They left the room after the 3 minutes.
What?
Can't conflate it.
And I understand, but my only point is that even if the court wants to consider the point where she's told she's detained to be custody, the motion should have been more specific on that, because I don't think there's anything in the first 3 minutes until she's told she's detained that would lead a reasonable person to believe they were in custody. And I would be remiss without at least mentioning this. If you look at the judge's findings at RP 159, 158. The judge in her conclusion of law number 3, for record proper 158, the judge says, Dr. Vasquez, by failing to advise Trevizo of her right of confidentiality, and she cites Rule 11504, acted as an agent of law enforcement. I'm not reading the entire paragraph on RP 158, paragraph 3, but the judge seemed to be reasoning that because the doctor did not go in and affirmatively say, before you say anything, you have a physician-patient privilege, that the doctor's failure to advise the defendant of that made her an agent. There's several problems with that. That's not the test that Santiago provides. Santiago, of course, is the case. This court, 2009 NMSC 45 says It's A, whether the government knew of and acquiesced in the conduct, but 2, whether the party performing the search intended to assist law enforcement efforts or to further his own ends. And Santiago makes it crystal clear in paragraph 24. It makes it clear that if it's a mixed motive, that's not enough. So in other words, even if the doctor was thinking, I do want to help the police, but I'm also concerned because I'm the doctor, I'm in charge of the ER, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, there's going to be Artesia General Hospital Board of Directors to answer to. I need to find out what's going on. I also need to find out how it impacts her care. Because one thing that's clear from the video is the doctor throughout all this made it clear, your care is paramount. Even Sergeant Anaya says, the number one priority is your care. We're going to step out if we need you. And the number one priority is your care. There's no evidence in the record that the doctor was motivated solely to help the police.
Wait a minute. This girl goes into the emergency room. She's got these backaches. She's asked, are you pregnant? She says no. They then do a pregnancy test. It comes out positive. They don't tell her. They don't tell her that the test shows she's pregnant. After the baby is delivered in the bathroom. So she comes in and says, we found that
She doesn't need to be told. It came out of her vagina.
a dead baby in the bathroom. Worse to that effect. It gives weight to the assertion that they thought from the beginning, the doctor thought from the beginning, she lied when she said she wasn't pregnant. And now she's confronting her without the benefit of having given her any medical information that she in fact delivered a dead baby. So that seems to me pretty agency oriented in terms of assisting the police.
Well, again, Santiago says that it has to be solely to help the police. Santiago says that there's any kind of mixed motive, like you have a professional interest.
An inference can be made, it is solely to help the police.
I don't believe that inference can be made under Santiago, but I will say this, Justice.
This hearing shouldn't even be held without a medical professional because the medical professionals and the medical examiner said the baby had oxygen in his lungs.
I think this points to a good point. Even if you give the defendant the benefit of the doubt that she did not know she was pregnant, immediately upon giving birth, the natural thing you would think anybody would do is, help, help, I just had a baby, help, help, I need help. She did not tell anybody for 30 minutes. It was 30 minutes later that the cleaning lady found the baby, and obviously another 5-10 minutes till the police showed up. I think that one can make a good argument that she did not even from the beginning avail herself of the physician-patient privilege. State v. Roper, 1996 NMCA 73, paragraph 6, said the privilege is designed to encourage patients to make complete disclosures of symptoms. I would argue that if you're hiding a material fact from the doctor that you just gave birth to a baby, you're not asking for help, arguably you're not even availing yourself for a privilege. Now, I understand after the fact, now that she's caught and she's in trouble, she wants to say, my privilege was violated. But State v. Strauss, 2015 NMSC 9, paragraph 44, states expressly, privileges often have limits, particularly where there are conflicting interests that may outweigh the interest of confidentiality. And it's interesting that Strauss notes in paragraphs 29 to 31 that New Mexico in 1973 became one of the earliest states in the country to impose a mandatory reporting duty on all persons. So New Mexico has a rich history of protecting children and babies. And the other one more thing I wanted to note is it's also interesting that some of this privacy and privilege is a little bit picked and choose what serves me. There was a lot of emphasis in the answer brief about privacy, and they didn't respect her privacy. And yet there's something in the answer brief where they say, well, the hospital let her go to the bathroom unattended. Well, she's 19 years old. It's almost incredible to me that they expected the doctor to go into the bathroom or a nurse to go into the bathroom and stand over her to make sure she didn't do anything. So there's got to be some treatment of, you're 19 years old, you're a responsible adult. I think that's been a little lacking here in terms of the defendant certainly has rights, she's on trial, but there has to be something set for the baby's rights too.
Yes.
Anything else?
I'm so happy he said that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for the good question.
In the matter of S1SC 40478, the court appreciates the briefing and oral argument today. This matter will be taken under advisement and is deemed submitted. Court is in recess. Thank Thank you.
I love that at the end that the state lawyer said, that what we've been saying, where's the baby's rights? There's another hearing sometime later this month, so I'm going to schedule it and I'll let you guys know. It took him long enough. I know. Finally. Yeah, I can't believe it. I'm shook. I want this to go to trial. I do. I think it should go to trial. Especially knowing now that in 1973, New Mexico became whatever for patients and babies. Protectant, I forget the law. I'll have to look into it. But even more so, let this go to trial. I think Alexee Trevizo needs to be locked up in prison or in a psych ward for the remainder of her life. Wow, that was a lot. Those oral arguments are intense. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. We're going to end this live. I made an Alexee Trevizo playlist. We'll continue to go over documents. There's still documents I need to go over. We didn't have time for that in yesterday's live. I don't want to make this one too long. And we have other lives planned for this evening. Isn't this like the second or third cheerleader that did something like this? Yes, we do have a true crime hangout tonight, and we're going to be talking about the other case, Lincoln Snelling, as well. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for participating in the discussion. Please hit the like button on your way out. Definitely make sure notifications are turned on. We have a couple more lives planned for this evening, so I hope to see you guys there. And justice for baby Alex. And Alexee Trevizo is a psychopath. That's all I have to say. Who needs to be in prison? Anyways, my opinion only. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate and love you guys. I will see you on the next one.